Welcome back. Welcome back. Well, let's just dive into it. We got the one and only Anthony Cofrancesco back again for the third one in our little series here on Amazon conversion rate optimization. The last couple of times he's talking about best practices for your images, how to get people to basically convert at the highest rate on your Amazon listing when it comes to your images. And now he's going to talk about best practices for product packaging, how to optimize your packaging. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to Anthony, successful agency owner, now joined the Pig Food team. Links below for more information about everything we're talking about. But yeah, Anthony, go ahead and take it away.
All right, Riley, thank you so much, guys. I'm really excited to be back again for the third time and hopefully drop some good information for you all. Riley, can you see my screen? Anything look good?
Yes, I see it. I see the title. So slide down. Looks good.
Cool. So yeah, this is going to be best practices for product packaging. In the other talks, I was kind of going over different best practices for images. And this is, I think, is just as important of a concept as images because, again, it's a visual thing that your customer is going to see. So I'm going to start off with kind of how I did in the last presentation and just give an essential framework, the overall thoughts about, okay, what is product packaging? What are the different components? And that'll help to get to the later part of the talk where we get to some of the strategies. So number one thing that I want to say is that packaging it's an essential element of your product, and it's really important for a few different reasons. Number one is pretty obvious, is that it's going to have increased production costs. So every single time that you print your product packaging, it's costing you money. On top of that, product packaging is something that's very difficult to change. So especially if you're selling on something like Amazon FBA, you could change your product packaging, but most sellers are not going to be in a position where if you want to make your product packaging and you want to change it on the fly, you're probably not going to go and pull a bunch of inventory out, have it repacked, and then send it back to FBA. So not only is it expensive to change the packaging, you're going to throw away all of the money that you had spent on that initial packaging run, but it's going to take time to do that. You're going to have to sell through the inventory. You're going to usually have to go through the manufacturing process for the packaging, which is going to be independent from the product itself. The last part, which is probably the most important, aside from the functionality and the cost things associated with product packaging, is that it's going to communicate crucial information about your product. And so we're going to dive into each of those a little bit today. The other thing that you should really consider about the product packaging is that it really is a pretty dynamic and powerful tool in your arsenal. If you think about all of the ways that you have to communicate with a customer, all the ways that you can convince someone to buy your product or to purchase your product again as a repeat buyer, the packaging really plays a large role in that. In some regards, it can be almost as important as the product itself. And so first and foremost is the visual appeal of the product. This is going to be the very first thing that someone sees about the product, not only when they physically get the product in real life, but also it's probably going to be one of the first things that they actually see when they're shopping for the product online. On top of that, especially in regards to an Amazon scenario, especially with Amazon FBA or FBM, is that Amazon has some pretty strict guidelines in terms of service, what you're allowed to have in your main image. And one of those things is that Amazon says in your main image, you're not allowed to have text in your main image. So product packaging is a really clever hack, a really interesting way to get around that. The other thing that is essential, especially for selling on Amazon FBA, is that if you want to become brand registered, product packaging is one of the things you're going to need. You're going to need a trademark, you're going to need a website, and you're also going to need customized product packaging that displays your brand name. So if you want to unlock those enhanced branding elements, if you want to unlock those extra branding protections, you're going to actually need product packaging before you can even apply for brand registry. So right now I'm going to walk through kind of what I call the anatomy of the product packaging. These are just general guidelines, again, to help you kind of understand how should you be going about designing your product packaging. And so basically you've got a few different parts. You've got the front, which is really should convey what is the product. The side, which is going to hopefully show a visualization or support. Back is going to be more of the technical information, and inside is going to be usually something surprising. And so here we've got a pretty good example, right? What I really recommend in terms of the front of the packaging is what is the product? This is going to be especially helpful in regards to your main image. So if someone lands on that first page of search results, they should be able to see very clearly what is the product. Actually, in most cases, should be much bigger than even your brand name. So in this case, right smack dab in your face, Bamboo wooden watches. Now on the side, this is kind of an interesting packaging because it's saying the boring side. The side of the packaging really should be for your visualization. This is for additional support, right? These are kind of extraneous information about the product that's going to help to rationalize what was on the front. On the back, this is where you're going to want to throw the really boring information, the technical information, the area where people are going to go and try to find, okay, I want to make sure that this product has certain specifications or qualifications before I actually add it to my cart or before I purchase. And then if you can, this is something that's overlooked by a lot of people, is the inside of the packaging really should try to contain something surprising, right? Something that's going to increase the overall experience of buying that product. So here, this is for a makeup brand, and it's got a very simple print on the inside. Again, when you open the box, you weren't expecting to see anything, but it doesn't really increase your production costs very much, if at all, to add in something that's going to have a better customer experience. So in terms of actually making improvements to your product packaging, there's generally three main ways, three main categories that this can fall into. You can have design improvements, functionality improvements, or improvements in the manner in which information is actually conveyed. So this is a really great example of a design change. And actually, this was a case study that we did with a company called Thrasio, where they went through a whole bunch of different iterations on their product packaging to go from the design on the left to the design on the right. And just in doing so, should kind of indicate some of the gravity of how important product packaging can be. Just from changing their packaging, they took this brand from $2 million to $20 million. And this is a really very good example of a design iteration, right? It's really just increased the visual appeal, the visual aesthetic of the packaging, going from the version on the left to the version on the right. In terms of functionality changes, these are rather changes that are actually going to help the product to perform better, to have the experience of the product easier to use. And so on the left-hand side, we have the traditional ketchup style bottle with the wide mouth of the cap versus later on designing rather not for the product, but designing for the experience of how the product is used. We can all visualize a glass ketchup bottle. You're not going to be able to squeeze it. You're going to have to kind of shake it to get the ketchup to come out of the top. It's not a very
those damn bottles.
Versus now we have the squeeze bottles where not only has the bottle gotten much softer, easier to squeeze, it comes out of a much smaller hole, which allows you to kind of guide where the ketchup is actually shot. But they've actually even made a further change by putting the cap on the bottom. So in its normal upright position, the ketchup is going to flow down, right? All of these things are again, a huge difference now that we're used to ketchup bottles, how they are today, how we're used to condiment bottles, how they are today. But this is a good example of a functionality increase. Another really big one, and the final one on here, is information. And information really should help to, the way that information is presented really should help to communicate the messages and the functionality of the product better. So imagine this example here of even the backside of the product packaging, going from something that's text-based to image-based. And so this is an example of the same product packaging, but for it was actually an acne mask. And then this is kind of explaining how to use it using images rather than text. So again, people might know exactly what the product is, but just on your product packaging, having that messaging come from a visual perspective rather than a text perspective. I think in some of my earlier presentations, I have already said that the human brain is like a big graphics processor. Every time that your eyes are open, it's processing information. And your brain is going to process an image 60,000 times faster than a text. So it's not a big surprise that something image-based product packaging is going to work better. A big question that I got this a lot in my previous agency as well, is, okay, I know I want to get custom product packaging. I know that this is going to be a good way for me to differentiate my product from my competitor, but how do I actually go and get it done? And so by and large, the manufacturer, whoever's making your product, is usually going to be a pretty good source of at least your initial coordination for product packaging. And so if you are going for more complex and more specific product packaging, you might have to go independently to your own manufacturer of that product packaging. And generally, sometimes the factory will make the packaging, but most of the time it won't. But at the very minimum, they'll be able to point you in the right place of saying they usually will have some connections that can do, by and large, the wide array of packaging you need. But generally, the process is quite simple. You're going to, first and foremost, you're going to design the die cut. A die cut is just a two-dimensional representation of a 3D product. So just imagine if you had a box and you completely flattened it out, right? And you put it on a table, that's what a die cut would be, but it's just going to be a digital version. And then so you're going to design the die cut. You can get this done very easily by going on a site like Fiverr, using any design agency. They'll be able to knock out a die cut. Most designers can do that. Once you have the die cut actually made, you're going to send that to the manufacturer, usually not your product manufacturer. It's going to be the person who's actually making the packaging. And then there's going to be some arrangement where they're going to print the packaging and then most likely pack it. And so typically what's going to happen is that you're going to have your packaging manufacturer send your boxes to your product manufacturer. And for a small fee, they're going to usually pack everything together and then ship it to Amazon. Amazon obviously has some really specific rules for product packaging. I'm not going to dive into them at a granular level because there's just too much detail, but basic rules that I want to cover is number one is the packaging has to be self-contained. So this packaging right here wouldn't work because this cord can slip out. Generally, what you really want to think of is what's going to be in the best interest of safety and inventory protection inside of a fulfillment center environment. So the reason this packaging won't work is because they don't want the electrical cord falling out. You'd have to stick this into an additional poly bag. The other thing is really important, and coming from someone who used to work and help manage a FC environment for Amazon, is you have to have packaging that's scannable. So that is a really, really big one, making sure that the barcodes that Amazon requires are very easily visible, very easily scannable. Another big thing, and I've seen this mistake so many times, is you have to have correct set labeling. And it might seem very intuitive to you that your product is or isn't sold in a multi-pack, but I'm telling you, these FC workers, they're trying to make their rates. They're trying to get inventory in as quick as possible. And so a very common thing is someone scanning multi-pack items as a single pack and vice versa. And the absolute, the thing that's going to happen there in that scenario is your inventory is going to get mismanaged, lost, and then it's just going to lead to really big delays. So you don't want to get that wrong. And then this is just a really big one. Again, I've just put this chart on the screen here. Make sure if you have bags, if you have products that are small, if you have things with batteries in them, any kind of safety, any kind of product where safety is a concern, make sure you've gone through Amazon TOS and you've read through it, and then you read through it like 3 or 4 more times, because this is a really easy way to get your products pulled and to get your account suspended, is if you break either labeling or packaging safety constraints that Amazon puts out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can search that stuff, guys, inside of Seller Central. Just kind of put it in the search bar and it'll pull up all their policies.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I think we're doing good on time. I'm going to start rolling through now. These are the strategies. That was the kind of overall framework. I think some of that would probably be a little bit of review, but these are kind of the strategies. These are things that you should probably think about potentially implementing into your brands, and some interesting ideas for packaging in general. So the first thing that I'll say is in terms of design. These are about design iterations on your product packaging, and make sure that every single element on your product packaging is intentional. And so when I give this example of this Angry Orange product packaging, the one from Thrasio where they grew a brand to $20 million, a lot of people say, well, Anthony, it's no surprise that the product packaging did very well. Look at it. It's bright, it's orange, it's very visually appealing. And to that, I would say, yes, that's absolutely true. But there's actually a lot more going on here in the product packaging that makes this effective beyond the bottle. The bottle is definitely an important one, and it's definitely valuable, but that's one small aspect. And so what I want to encourage you to do, what I want to encourage agencies and creatives to do, is to think about every single element on the packaging and think, okay, does this make sense? And could it be improved? Could it be iterated on in any way? So starting here from the top up, we've got the cap, right? This cap could have been a range of different colors, but they've made it black, which has a really nice contrasted color. You'll also notice that the cap is not a smooth finish. It has a ridged finish on it, which makes it really easy to spin off. This is all intentional. You'll also notice here that the brand name Angry Orange is actually much smaller than the functionality of the product. the product is actually a spray-on odor eliminator. And so Angry Orange is much smaller than right in your face, smack dab in the middle, odor eliminator, what the product actually does. You'll notice they've got these little flying oranges that are kind of flying around, indicating some freshness, indicating that it's going to smell like oranges. You'll see it has all natural and non-toxic, right? You'll see the dog and the cat showing you that this is a pet deodorizer. You've got their alternate tagline here, smells like heaven, works like hell. You've got the sizing, and you've even got some of these flames at the bottom. Again, when you're looking at this on first glance, the first thing that you might process on a noticeable level is the color of the packaging. But on a subconscious level, again, every second that your eyeballs are open, your brain is processing that visual information. This is all going in, and on a subconscious level is helping you decide whether you want to click into a listing and whether you want to actually add to cart, even if you don't realize it. With product packaging, what I like to recommend is less is almost always more. There's very few scenarios where going way over the top on detail is going to be better. And that even includes really expensive products, really complex products. And so I like to pull in the example of the PS5, very new, and the Mavic Pro. These are both very expensive products, very technical products. But at the end of the day, they've done a very good job of just showing exactly what you're going to get, right? Very minimal product packaging, and then leaving those extraneous details for other parts of the listing, right? Really focusing on the visual aesthetic of the box and leaving that technical information for the back or the inside of the packaging. Really, I've seen so many good examples, and you're going to see a bunch more in this presentation on just great executions and simplicity. And so this is actually a very good one from this food product right here. And you'll notice that instead of having a really complicated ingredients list, what they've actually done is they've actually just broken it down into the most simple ingredients. Now, somewhere I think it's on the inside of this product packaging, they actually have like the full nutrition table, which is like required by law. But what they've done on the packaging is that they realized, okay, people want to see the nutrition information, but they don't need to see it front and center. They don't need to see it even on the back of the packaging. And so, yeah, I think they break it down, the macronutrients down there, but very clean.
That's a great idea.
Very subtle. I love this one.
I love RX bars too.
There's no surprise. There's no surprise as to why this brand does so well, and I think a lot of it comes down to people were buying these protein bars and they just wanted to see, okay, they know, again, I think if you go to the back of this, they have what's required by law, the nutrition table information, but they're like, okay, right in your face, aim for simplicity, 3 egg whites, 6 almonds, 4 cashews, 2 dates, no BS. Right in your face, exactly what the product is. They weren't trying to be overly complicated with the packaging. In terms of if you're selling, these two are subscription boxes, but this is pretty widespread advice is if you can, right? And this probably won't cost you very much, if anything extra, give your customers an unboxing experience. So when they open up the box, just think and ask your manufacturer. I love going to the Global Sources Expo in Hong Kong because normally they'll have a packaging expo as well. And I love going around and seeing all the different packaging configurations and saying, hey, how much extra does it cost to print a message on the inside of the box? And 9 times out of 10, they're going to tell you it's like 10 cents extra, 15 cents extra. And so if you have a little bit of flexibility in your profit margins and you're not trying to just compete solely on price, think about what it would be like to actually have an unboxing experience when they open it up, that it's special and a little bit surprising. This is just another really good example of that. Again, most of the time, your packaging, very few times actually, is your packaging not able to have printing on the inside. And so what I try to do with my products, and even with the clients that I've worked with, is I try to recommend, if you can swing it, print something on the inside of the product packaging, just because it's a nice way to stand out. Another strategy here is to think outside of the box, pun intended, and explore alternatives to boxes. Not only from a functionality standpoint, that boxes, and a cost standpoint, that boxes are, just by their very nature, they're going to take up like the most volumetric size, which is obviously a really big thing in regards to shipping and fulfillment costs. But it can also just be a different experience of trying to go with different packaging alternatives. So one of them is a tube. Again, this is another thing I love, going to Global Sources, going around to the Packaging Expo and seeing so many different types of packaging inspiration. And tubes are an interesting one. Think about how many products rather that you've received that are in a box that very easily could be shipped in a tube. And then the cool thing about a tube is a box I'm almost always going to throw away. right? Because it doesn't have the rigidity to really add much value in my life versus a tube. Every product that I have that's ever been shipped to me in a tube, I usually keep that tube for something, even if it's just storing small things in. So again, this is a very good branding play, and it can be a very unique and also very cost-effective type of packaging to ship. Pouches are also really great. Back in the day, if you're trying to go really cheap on a product, you would just stick something in a poly bag. And then if you wanted to go a little bit higher end, you'd stick it in a poly bag with a sticker. In 2020, there's no reason to use just a normal poly bag anymore, right? They're very boring. Now you can do full color print poly bags, full color print plastic, or even recycled sustainable materials bags, and they look really great. And they're very cheap. Again, it's going to keep your dimensional weight low. You can put all of your barcodes and all of the scannable items directly onto the package. And these are very cheap, much cheaper than a box, keeps your weight low, keeps your volume low. If you have a really bulky item, I think I maybe mentioned this in the first presentation, but think about a cardboard wrap. So trying to stick this blanket into a box, again, it would be an expensive box, right? And it's going to take up a lot of volumetric weight. You wouldn't want to just stick a blanket rather in a plastic bag. That's not going to look very appealing. So what I'd recommend doing is sticking it in this cardboard wrap, and then for the compatibility with Amazon TOS, put it inside of a plastic bag. It's still going to be a good experience. You can still put this really, really very clear exactly what the product is, full-size travel blanket. Again, you're going to be able to indicate the visual message, and this is a very functional package. For eco-friendly product packaging, so the thing with eco-friendly packaging generally for the less expensive product packaging, it's a little bit difficult to actually get sustainable ink to show up on recycled cardboard and different types of recycled prints. And so for that reason, when you are if you're selling an eco-friendly product, obviously you have to put it in eco-friendly packaging, right? I mean, it wouldn't make any sense if someone's buying a sustainable straw and then they're getting it and it's like in a non-eco-friendly package. That kind of defeats the whole purpose. Yeah. You'll probably get destroyed on your reviews. So that's the first rule, is if you're selling something eco-friendly, put it in eco-friendly sustainable packaging. If you are going to use something that the color packaging print is not going to be vibrant, stick to something that's going to be text-based or illustrations. And so you can see here, this illustration actually looks pretty good because it's not too complex and it doesn't really require very vivid colors to see this, versus if I was to try to put like a picture on this, it would be very washed out. It wouldn't look clean. And so it's actually a really cheap way to get your packaging done, is just to have an illustration. These are for some organic bars. And then the colors, they're not very vibrant. They're not very bold, but it's okay because it's an illustration, versus if you try to put like an image on it, it just won't look good. Also, the text space is just good, again, because the text is going to stand out against that brownish color. With that being said, if you're selling an eco-friendly or a sustainable product that's a little bit more expensive and you can splurge, you can get different sustainable baggage prints. I think this is actually a cornstarch blend. And so you can actually do a full color print on this. These are pretty expensive. I think these are maybe even like $3 or $4 a bag. But if you're selling a product that can justify that cost, maybe not $4, but I think it's like maybe $2.50, $3 a bag. You can do full color print on sustainable packaging. It's just a little bit more expensive, but at the same rate, your product should be more expensive as well. And what I've seen is, looking in these categories, most people are not going to those lengths. So it'd be an easy way to stand out, especially from a main image. Something to keep in mind is that if you are doing sustainable packaging, and this is if you're trying to negotiate with suppliers, this is why sometimes if you're trying to negotiate too much on price, a supplier might actually screw you over in the end, that they'll put you in a sustainable pouch or a sustainable bag, but then there's other parts of the packaging that aren't sustainable. So you really want to clarify that. Okay, is the packaging sustainable? Is the ink sustainable? Are the solvents, and this is complex stuff, but are the solvents actually sustainable? And then as well, are the zippers actually recyclable as well and sustainable? Another tip is, if you're selling anything that freshness is important, or you want to protect the integrity of a seal, sometimes even if the product itself, it doesn't actually need to be fresh, maybe it's actually a type of good that can have a longer shelf life and it doesn't really technically need to be sealed. Just again, that customer experience of opening up a seal, even if I've seen it done really well for like makeup products, cosmetic products, anything that's supposed to be, you're giving this vibe of it being fresh, just having them open a seal actually does something psychologically for the brain. So something to keep in mind there. like I said earlier, Amazon TOS is really specific. You're not allowed to have text in your main image. Now, a really clever way to get around this is by making your packaging almost like an infographic. And so this is a really good example of, this is a pet absorbent pad. And they've done a really good job here of not only making the packaging look good, but this almost looks like an infographic. And so it's showing you the sizing dimensions. It's showing you that it's 4 layers. It's kind of has this the water droplet, so it's letting you know that it's absorbing water. It's showing you all these different features and attributes. I've actually seen this done really well. The previous talk that I gave was all about 3D rendering, and I've actually seen people's main image where it's literally just a 3D render, and it occupies the full frame of the main image, and it literally looks just like an infographic. The only thing they've done is they've made a 3D render with an edge on it, so it looks like a box. And Amazon doesn't seem to be cracking down on that. If that is actually, I've seen them take down the image, but usually they can contact their account manager or contact seller support. And if they actually show a physical picture of the product and say, no, that's what the product actually looks like, then usually you can get that image.
This is the box, guys. Yeah, I'm just showing you the box.
Yeah, and so that's a really very clever way to go about it. If you're selling a commodity product, right, where you're really not, you're not competing as much on your brand, you're competing much more about like, hey, this is that product. Consider making your brand name quite small. This was kind of from that Angry Orange example, but like you've got this Q2M here, that's the brand name, but like tire cleaner is a little bit better of a descriptor. So again, just think about think about if your brand name really carries weight, and let that guide your decision. Okay, so always explore color packaging variations. So you might come to a product packaging design that you really love, but just changing the vibrancy, the saturation, there's like a million different ways that you can skin the cat in terms of color. And so I would just encourage you to look at 2 different things. And when we use like PicFu to test these, especially in terms of like what the impact is on CTR, just making the colors more vibrant really can go a long way. So just something to keep in mind there. This is kind of a funny one, but always make sure you double check typography and design consistency. So especially with your die cut, like if you have handholds, if you have other things, like, make sure you actually think about it outside of the die cut. Make sure you actually like look at the packaging in real life. Have the factory like send you a photo and make sure it looks real. Again, too, with typography, this isn't supposed to say anal touch. It's supposed to say final touch.
Final touch.
This is just things that you don't want to get wrong.
Yeah.
As well, I've talked a lot about the external part of the packaging, but don't forget about the internals as well. If you're selling something that is a fragile product, these can be technology products are a very good example of this. Don't forget about protecting the product itself, especially too, just for reducing negative reviews, high return rates. That's the quickest way to destroy your Amazon brand, is to forget that, hey, I'm actually selling a product where I've even heard of examples where just from products shifting around, it's like the product wasn't even broken, but people opened the box and it was a mess, and then it leads to negative reviews. So really think about what your unboxing experience is like. Generally, what I'd say is like where packaging design is moving forward is you want to use neatly structured layouts over anything that's not neatly structured. So again, think about what I said earlier with the core elements, every single thing on here, like, does it really need to be there? And so like, what is this circle doing? What is this circle? Like you can go and look through this and say, okay, this is like way over the top, not providing any value, versus looking at this kombucha. Okay, it's got their logo here. It tells you that it's kombucha. It's very clean. It's easy to digest.
It's beautiful.
So go with neatly structured layouts and be very, very critical when a designer sends you something over. Really ask yourself, okay, every single thing on the box, every single thing on the packaging, does it really need to be there? But at the same time, too, I was saying there's a few examples where a non-minimalist design actually works well. On the left-hand side, this is for a yoga Pilates ring. A minimalist design works very well here. You want it to be simple. The product itself is not complex. Versus over here on the right, this is actually for a really high-quality version of dark chocolate. If you have a product that's supposed to be complex, it's supposed to be aged, it's supposed to be refined, then you can actually get away with using a very what I would call a maximalism design. So it's the opposite of minimalism. I don't know if it's really a word, but if you're selling like a product, like I've seen this done really well with like men's fragrances, right? And it's like you're buying this as a gift for like this man in your life. It can be complex. It doesn't need to be minimal. And in fact, the minimal design wouldn't really work well in those cases. So with that being said, I'm going to wrap up here. This is kind of with some overall concepts that I'm going to leave everyone with. Again, I think I just made this. This is, I think for some, it's like some hair product for, for like the refined man in your life. And so this is, again, a good example of complex packaging designs. This again is getting into just think outside of the box when it comes to product packaging. If you have the opportunity to go to a trade show and actually see packaging, I think you can do a lot of sourcing nowadays, and it's very helpful. You can go on like Alibaba and you can actually source your products, but packaging is one of the few things that I think is actually, you get a huge advantage of actually seeing these things in real life, just because you wouldn't even know what to search for on Alibaba if you're searching for different types of packaging, versus if you go to one of these expos, you can kind of see it, you can write down what it's called, and you can get a lot of really good ideas. So metallics are a really great example of like something that's going to make your packaging costs go up by like a few cents. And it's not going to change the cost overall of the product, but it makes a big impact. And so this is for this brand, the Naked Marshmallow. This is for, I think it's like types of chocolate. But again, you can go and make this packaging to go from a non-metallic to metallic print really only adds on a very marginal cost. It's the same thing with embossing. The cool thing about embossing as well is it doesn't actually usually come down into the product itself. It's usually just a sticker that's applied. So this is embossing for a wine bottle. But again, if you're trying to sell a premium product, you can look at, I think it still says metallic packaging. It's just a typo, but look at embossing. Look at something where you can actually run your hand over it and it's not flat. You can actually feel a texture, and that really can go a long way. If you're doing a natural based product, almost always a natural kind of pastel color is going to be a really good option. So again, these are just things like, let's say you have your product packaging now, you've been selling your product for years and years, and you're like, hey, I want to, maybe your conversion rate is starting to go down. The competition level in your space is going up. Just go and re-examine your color options. And this could be another way that you can completely come back with new product packaging and really reinvigorate your brand, really reinvigorate your conversion rate. Think about, just in general, again, what I like to do is when I'm working with my design agencies, anyone who's designing packaging for me, is I like to say, okay, make one version of the packaging that is really simple, right? It's really minimalist, and then make one that's like really over the top. And don't completely forget about the over the top, the abstract, something that's really going to have a strong emotional appeal, because again, you might just be selling socks, but now this sock box is going to look infinitely better than something that's boring. And the last thing that you want to do, especially in a commodity market, especially with how competitive products are getting, is sell a boring product. This is, I think I like this even better than metallic colors. This is what they told me at these expos. It's called holographic coloring. And so, I mean, it's exactly what it is. It's almost like a metallic, but it looks holographic. So I can't explain it in any better way, but if you're selling a premium product, again, this just adds a few cents on, and especially if you're selling to a younger demographic, pretty much like anyone under 30, this can work very well if you have a little bit of margin. The last one that I'll leave
colors,
you guys with,
like as you turn it a little bit.
Yeah, that's exactly
that's the kind of thing you're talking about.
That's what I was trying to explain. Yeah, like shifts colors as you spin it.
Yeah. That's dope.
Okay, and this is the last little concept that I'll leave you with, and this is something that's really cool. It's called variable data printing. And so what variable data printing is like, normally your product packaging has to be identical, right? Like every single box has to be the same. But now with variable data printing, you can actually go and print customized little bits and pieces. So this is for Scratch Labs. And so I think what they use it in this case for is every package has an individual QR code on it. And so if you scan it, I think they use it for a rewards program. So like, this is really great for subscription products, for expensive products, for supplements. You can use it to verify, like you can scan a QR code with your phone using an app or just, any QR code scanner. And you can verify that like this package was actually manufactured by us. And there's, this has been deemed safe, right? You see this with cannabis products. It's getting really popular where counterfeits are being sold. So you can scan and say, nope, this is actually a real product. They're using it for rewards, loyalty programs. They're using it for also inventory tracking. You can see if you're selling in multiple different locations. So VDP is something really interesting. This is something within the past couple of years that's really started to take off. I want to just give a special thanks to a company called ePack. They gave a lot of really good information and help on creating this presentation. They do a lot of the really advanced packaging solutions, and especially around sustainability, around VDP, and around just really good packaging prints in terms of color and how it looks. What I will say as well is if you guys have any questions, if you want to download the slides, anything like that, feel free to reach out, anthony@pickfu.com. And then just like a 2-second pitch, I'm not going to really even go into this because on the other two presentations, I've explained what PickFu is. But generally, PickFu, probably like one of the biggest things we do for e-commerce is around product packaging. And the reason why is like you go and you create a bunch of different designs and you say, okay, these all look really great. How do you decide? PickFu can help you make those decisions. And the really cool thing as well is like in terms of, like I said, breaking it down to individual core elements of a product, PickFu, because it's not just voting on the winner, you're actually getting detailed feedback as to why it won. That's where you get those little out of the box ideas where it's like adding an element or subtracting an element from your packaging. All those little tweaks that you as a seller might think are really insignificant and that the buyer might only register on a subconscious level. PickFu can really help you get some feedback to help you make those decisions with those nuanced details. So if you haven't used PickFu before, you can use the code 90DayFBA and get 50% off your first test. And that's everything I got.
Boom. Awesome. Okay, some really exciting stuff there. Not only for my own brands, but to up the game of some of my clients' brands. Awesome. Another killer one. Excited to implement all this stuff as usual. Any questions on your end, Payman, about packaging? I know you're getting into your own product development.
Yes, that was very interesting for me because I'm thinking of launching my own premium product. I will probably contact you directly, Anthony, for some feedback on some things. But do you have any connections with any packaging companies, especially in Latin America and South America? Because most of them are, and Hong Kong and China, there's, a million of them that we both know. But if you're trying to manufacture a product outside of Asia, say in South America, which right now I'm contemplating very seriously for a Kickstarter campaign, it's going to be a premium leather product from Argentina, because Argentina is some of the highest leather finest in the world. So I would be interested in if you know anyone that you could refer to me that has a high quality, packaging company based in South America. I would be super happy.
I wish I did, but I definitely don't have any connections in that regard. But I think it would be the same advice as I would just find some local suppliers, and they'll definitely know. Yeah, that'll be the way.
Cool. That was awesome, man. Absolutely awesome. You're the first person so far that we brought in 3 times. We have one other person, David Nicolici. We had him twice. Is also dropped amazing content, but you're the first one, like a repeat. So the next question is, are we going to have the pleasure of having you for a 4th time?
I'm open to it. I'm pretty slammed for the rest of December, but maybe sometime in January, let's reconnect. And
for sure. That's awesome. And thank you. Awesome. Thank you a lot for all of your amazing, golden feedback you've been bringing on. I knew that you're the real deal, but now you went way over and beyond everything that I was expecting. So kudos for that. And for anyone looking into PickFu, PickFu is you cannot have e-commerce or even other type of online business without PickFu, because it's all about data.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I appreciate the kind words, and I'm happy to help out. And yeah, it's been exciting. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good holidays and New Year. We'll reconnect in Q1 and to drop some more knowledge on them and keep it going. And if you guys are listening, podcast or YouTube or whatever, tag a friend, tag a fellow seller who needs to step their game up on this type of stuff, and links below to the other 2 talks and to PickFu and all that good stuff below.
All right. See you guys later. Thanks so much.
Take care. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, Anthony. See ya.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the FBA Lifestyle Podcast. Don't forget to follow on all podcast platforms, YouTube and Instagram. Ready to fast track your first or next FBA product? Ready to create a real product that leaves the competition in the dust? Then check out the 90-Day FBA Challenge. a 12-week accelerator program with weekly coaching calls where we help you go from zero idea what to sell to a product live on Amazon within 90 days. And download the free Amazon Secrets ebook, FBA Lifestyle, the Amazon Experts. Start your FBA business. Achieve the freedom lifestyle.